And then on the other matter, with respect to the election challenge and qualification issue, I'm prepared to answer questions regarding that. If there are any questions, it's been talked about quite a bit. I think everyone's aware that a petition for writ of mandamus against Cindy Bonham as the clerk, strictly in her capacity as clerk, and not seeking monetary relief, but seeking a writ, which means an order of mandamus, which means an order compelling a governmental official when they have no discretion but to act a certain way. So that action was filed. We have a hearing at 9 a.m. Wednesday, and I'm prepared to answer any further questions that commissioners or Mr. Knight may have in this forum.
Questions? Or other, after we deal with that issue, then we'll ask whatever questions the city attorney, other questions. Questions?
Obviously, I have a question or two. As the other commissioner who may become a candidate as a result of this, I need to understand if I read through the writ of mandamus, and I also read all the laws. And from my perspective, there's a lot of information that is not in that writ. And my question is, will the city be bringing forward additional information in support of the clerk and what she's done? Or is that information all there is?
Unless and until we are directed otherwise, the city manager and I have spoken about this, and we intend to present evidence and argument to the judge, and we believe we understand the relevant evidence. We would certainly present Ms. Bonham as a witness and other staff. There's been a lot of discussion regarding some of the case law, and I can discuss the cases, I can discuss the ordinance if there's an interest for detail, but we do have a hearing Wednesday morning at 9, and generally prefer just to save the argument to the judge.
If advice to me was, am I now an unopposed candidate? My reading of the law leads me to believe that I am no longer an unopposed candidate, that through the law I am now actually an opposed candidate, which would mean I could continue to collect campaign funds and could continue to campaign. Since we're not moving the election date, I have effectively been taken out of.
I understand your question.
Mr. Brennan, is that something you can even comment on? I mean, in your capacity?
Well, I'm just asking for clarification.
I know, but I'm
Mayor, I was just getting ready to say that. I mean, I cannot advise. I cannot. In fact, lawyers get in trouble if we advise individual people. In fact, our advice needs to be strictly limited to the advice we've been given.
You're the city's attorney. You're not an individual candidate's attorney, I guess is the question.
Right.
I know you have an opinion, but
I'd just like to know what the law says. At $113 a month in salary, it's very difficult to hire a $500 an hour lawyer to tell me whether I'm allowed, whether I am opposed or unopposed, and whether I'm allowed to campaign. That seems very reasonable question.
Yeah, this is an issue I've dealt with other elected officials. The Florida elections law is very complicated. Resign to run can be complicated because different offices have different rules for resign to run and the timing thereof. And I'm very sympathetic to the complexity of the election code, particularly when many of the politicians in Florida don't earn substantial salaries as a result of their public service. Having said that, am I buzzing? Okay, thank you. I can only say that elected officials and candidates for office are permitted to raise funds and campaign in accordance with Chapter 106, which is the campaign finance laws, and you'll probably need to seek counsel for that.
Well, how discouraging this will be for the general public to run for an elected office if you can't even get an answer as to what the law says. And I don't hold you responsible for that, Mr. Brown. I hold the system responsible for that. But put yourself in my place, if you will. What do you do? For $118 a month, I am
That's more than
expected
that,
to
by
pay
the way.
I'm sorry, my check is $118 a month. And the question is, how can the state, how can we have open democracy if indeed for me to find even the answer to the simplest question, I have to pay $500 an hour for an elections lawyer? There's simply something wrong with this. And I will let you off the hook, Mr. Brown, because it's not your fault. But I just think the public needs to be aware of what a mockery we have made of democracy. And these sort of what I consider frivolous lawsuits, what they do to the willingness of good citizens to run for office.
And I will say, and I understand, and I've had several personal experiences with elected officials running against some very hyper-complicated election law issues, and it is a shame that the election law is as complicated as it is. I will also say that the only case law we can find that allows a candidate to complete his or her qualification after the deadline is a case where there was fault attributable to the election officials in terms of what they described as a large crowd of people where it wasn't clear where an individual could file his completed papers. So, you know, I can talk more about the legal opinions if any questions, but that's...
No, that's
I
fine.
mean,
I
advise
don't mean to
everyone.
put you on the spot. I'm just horrified for the citizens that that's the situation you're put in when you run for office. It's tragedy.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, my question about the subject is, I guess, a process one, and I don't know. Let's assume for Commissioner McMacken, let's not discuss the current race, but do we sit as a canvassing board even in an unopposed situation, or does that have to happen to certify the results? I'm just asking the process question.
No, when you're on when there's truly no opposition, your campaign closes down and those statutes tell you what you can use your collected funds for at that point.
But no, I'm talking about from the city standpoint, I don't mean from the candidate standpoint. I understand the candidate's
Yeah, there's
position.
no election, no canvassing board, no process.
That's all.
So what I read about the $40,000 is pretty legitimate. The cost of the campaign, I mean, the cost of the election. That goes away.
Correct.
When it's
How
unopposed.
long, what is a reasonable anticipation of the end of this? Because there's only 60 days left till the election.
That's a very fair question, and Mr. Knight and I discussed that today, and Mr. Knight contacted the supervisor of elections, and he indicated, I think January 25th is the deadline.
That's the deadline for getting ballots printed in time for the March election.
Oh, that's good.
So the answer to the question is, when you look at these cases, and I've looked at every one of them, the courts are incredibly mindful of the need to act quickly. That's why we have a hearing Wednesday morning. You're going to get a ruling from the lower court, a ruling from the appellate court, I would predict, before January 25th. In my personal experience in these cases, it's the fastest I've ever seen appeals courts move, because they're mindful of the need to make a decision so that the ballots can be printed.
Do they ever move the election date?
No, not in my experience. I never say never, but no.
This is a real learning experience. Love to learn. I'm done with my questions, Mayor, unless you...
I don't know if the other commissioners have any other questions?
Well, sir.
Great. And you covered the federal case, so you'll keep us posted on that.
Yes,
Any other
ma'am.
questions for the city attorney?